It was a sweltering afternoon in downtown Atlanta when Officer Mark Jenkins pulled his patrol car to a screeching halt near the courthouse. Across the street, a well-dressed black woman exited her car and walked briskly toward the courthouse steps, a leather briefcase in hand. Jenkins' eyes narrowed as he followed her movements. She didn't belong, he thought. Not here. He adjusted his sunglasses and stepped out of the car. "Ma'am," he called, loud enough to turn heads. The woman paused, looking at him with a raised brow. Her expression wasn't one of fear, but mild confusion. "Yes, officer?" she asked, standing tall. "Do you know this is a restricted parking zone?" he said, gesturing toward her car. "I'm here for a court meeting. I won't be long," she replied evenly. Jenkins smirked, approaching her. "Court meeting, huh? Got some ID to prove that? And maybe pop open that briefcase while you're at it." The woman blinked, clearly taken aback. "I'm not sure why you'd need to see inside my briefcase. I'm not under any suspicion, and I'm certain this interaction isn't warranted." Jenkins folded his arms, his tone dripping with condescension. "Look, ma'am, either you comply or we can take this downtown. Your choice." Around them, pedestrians began to slow their steps, watching the interaction unfold. The woman sighed, reaching for her ID. She handed it over, but Jenkins barely glanced at it. "What's in the bag?" he pressed again. "I'm not opening my briefcase for you, officer," she said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm already late." Jenkins stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Late for what exactly? Some shady business deal?" Her phone buzzed in her hand, and she answered. "Hello, Chief Hendricks. This is Judge Olivia Moore. I'm standing outside the courthouse being detained for no apparent reason." "Yes, an officer named Jenkins. Could you please send someone down?" The words Judge Olivia Moore hit Jenkins like a freight train, but his pride refused to let him back down. He crossed his arms, scoffing. "A judge? That's a new one. Got any other stories you want to tell?" Moments later, the sound of screeching tires filled the air. A black SUV pulled up, and out stepped Chief Hendricks himself. His crisp uniform glinted in the sunlight as he approached, his face unreadable. "Officer Jenkins!" Hendricks barked. "What's going on here?" Jenkins' confidence faltered slightly, but he straightened up. "Caught her parking in a restricted zone. Seemed suspicious, so I asked for her ID and to check her belongings. She's refusing." The chief turned to Judge Moore. "Your Honor, I'm so sorry for this. Are you all right?" Judge Moore gave a curt nod. "I'm fine, but this behavior is unacceptable. Officer Jenkins escalated a situation with no probable cause." "Your Honor?" Jenkins stammered. His face turned ashen as the realization of who she was sunk in. "Yes," Hendricks said sharply. "Judge Olivia Moore, our state's newest federal appointee, the same person you've been harassing for the past 10 minutes." Jenkins opened his mouth, but no words came out. The gathered crowd began to murmur, their faces a mix of shock and satisfaction. "This department has no room for such conduct," the chief continued, his voice firm. "Officer Jenkins, consider yourself suspended pending an investigation. Hand over your badge and weapon." The onlookers gasped as Jenkins reluctantly obeyed. Judge Moore adjusted her blazer and turned to the chief. "I trust this will be addressed thoroughly?" "Absolutely, Your Honor," Hendricks replied, nodding gravely. With that, Judge Moore walked up the courthouse steps, her dignity intact, while Jenkins was led away by another officer. The crowd began to disperse, whispers of justice and accountability on their lips. For Jenkins, it was a day he'd never forget. For Judge Moore, it was a reminder of the work still to be done.